The Toyota San Bernardino Recording Studio presents IE Newswire Daily with Roy Bleckert. So sit back and enjoy the show.
There we go. We'll see if we can enjoy the show today on a Wicked Wednesday, coming to you from the Junkyard Studios out here in Moreno Valley, but we're broadcasting all over the world on YouTube, on IE Newswire, and Facebook Live on that soon to be. And there's going to be some really big announcements coming up here pretty soon about what we're going to be doing for 2020. It's going to be very exciting. Big time on the deal of going back and forth. But one of the things, had a fun day today. There's been stuff in the news. We do have an update on the Moreno Valley City Managers deal that went on as they had a closed session. There was a little bit of press release on that coming back and forth on the deal. Going nuts, so we'll cover that a little bit later. And some more of the local and national news and stuff like that. First, I'm going to show, you can look at my hands. If you're going to see that, you're going to see the glue and the stuff. Yes, as you get a good close-up of that with the blue fingers. That's Christie's hot glue that you'd use for, it's really probably the best glue for gluing PVC pipe. We had a little fiasco with the water line that's been going on, and I've been taking too long to fix it. But, my dad came up with a brilliant idea. It was an old 2-inch water line. He said, we'll just shove a 3/4-inch plastic right up the line. We won't have to dig 300 feet of trench, which worked pretty good for about 260 or 70 feet. And then it was like bam, 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 solid. I mean, just... And then with 260 feet of pipe, you can't bust the rust and the stuff loose. So I had to go back through the other end, and I got I had about a 15, 20 feet of steel 3/8 rod that I was able to get through most of it, and then I glued the about 30 or 40 foot of the plastic pipe to do and get the last through. But it was about 30-foot packed solid. I don't know how the water was running through it before, because I mean it took me about an hour just to get that last 30 feet of line, but it worked pretty good. I mean, finally got about 300 feet of pipe shoved up the old pipe in there, so it was like a mini tunnel for the deal. Didn't have to dig a trench or anything, but hopefully we'll get it all wrapped up. I just got that done. That's why I didn't really have time to, as you can see, wash my hands real good. I still got the Christie's PVC glue all over my hands yet on that, but that's no big deal. We'll survive on that. The big news of the day, which I mean, Trump was out there saying this is a witch hunt. I did nothing wrong. It was the other side that was doing all this stuff. They were the ones that were doing that. We heard the impeachment hearings and all this, and Nadler and the crew up there, and Pelosi with her, we got to uphold the Constitution, and it's about elections, and they didn't. Well, little thing came through the Senate Judiciary Committee today. The Inspector General Horowitz's report was released. Boy, did this whole thing take a whole 180 turn. I mean, we have some really, really, really disturbing things going on, especially at the FBI with Comey and Strzok and Page. And all the lying and just, we don't like Trump. We'll just start wiretapping everybody for no particular reason and lying about it. This has got to go. I mean, our FBI is in serious need of either overhauling, scrapping it, starting over, or something. Because I don't care, love or hate Donald Trump or anything else. Nobody, Carter Page, nobody should have the law just indiscriminately just saying, we're going out after you. That's called dictatorship. That's called ruler. That's called rule by fear. And we in the United States cannot stand for this. Somebody who's been going through a little bit of this stuff on the election stuff and wrote a column about it, and we will talk about our column about homeless a little bit later on. But over the weekend, had a column about the the impeachment hearings. But this whole thing that broke on the Inspector General's report was really disturbing. Horowitz's report. We have on the line. We have back on after she's been off for a while, and we've been kind of adjusting things. Editorial writer for the Southern California News Group, which includes the Press Enterprise, Redlands Daily Facts, Inland Daily Bulletin, San Bernardino Sun, and a whole host of other papers. Did that without stuttering. And most important, I think, Vice President of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, Susan Shelley. Welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you. It's great to be with you, Roy.
Most people don't say that.
You're wrong.
And I said, we'll talk about your column on the homeless because that's important too. That I just saw that came across the line. But I'm sure you heard about the Inspector General's report that came out today. I mean, man, did this whole Russiagate impeachment hearing things take a big 180 today? What do you think?
Well, this is a very interesting situation because if you read the facts that the Inspector General uncovered, it's a complete picture of bias. And yet he drew the conclusion that it wasn't bias. It's so crazy. If you put this side by side with the report he did on the Hillary Clinton email investigation, what you see is that he looked at the range of discretionary decisions that these prosecutors and investigators have the power to make under FBI regulations. Now, they made all the decisions on the Hillary favorable side and all the decisions on the Trump unfavorable side. They went as far in Hillary's favor as they could and as far against Donald Trump as they could. Plus, they have all these emails from the people making the decisions in the investigation saying that they love Hillary and they hate Trump, and yet he concludes that there's no bias. How can that be? Does he expect that he has to find an email that says, we are making decisions based on our personal political bias in order to say that there's bias? It's crazy. It's just irrational.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things they took back, the CIA's out saying, this is a bunch of internet rumors and stuff. And I mean, these guys at the FBI, Comey and his crew, just kept pushing this stuff to me, it appears to me, without any regard to the civil rights of anybody. Donald Trump, Carter Page, everybody else in this. They did not want Trump in. They figured if Trump did get in, they were going to figure out some way to get him out of there. And our law enforcement office agencies, whatever you want to classify the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, is its complete title. I guess they're not technically a law enforcement agency. But if they're using their police powers, which they have, investigative, been able to do that, to go after people that they don't like, we got big trouble.
Absolutely. And this is not the first time this has happened. In the Inspector General's report, they mentioned that for every year for several years now, they have gone through what some of the challenges are for administrators in the FBI, and one of them is how do you handle things like these FISA warrants, and how do you handle these sensitive intelligence matters? And they have gone through this before, and yet it was as if this was a brand new thing and no one ever realized that they had to take any special precautions, so they didn't. It's just completely bogus. The conclusions he drew were so outrageous that John Durham, who is the special prosecutor looking into the origins of the Russia investigation for the Attorney General, and that's a criminal investigation. That's not a bureaucratic inspector general. That's a criminal, real U.S. prosecutor investigation. He had to make a statement saying that he did not agree with the conclusion that the FBI's investigation was correctly predicated. In other words, started for a good reason. He didn't agree with that conclusion. I thought that was really remarkable that he would put out a statement like that. It was as if to tell the press, don't go too deeply into this viewpoint because it's not valid. Very interesting.
Yes,
we haven't heard the last of it.
And it was during Operation Hurricane on this deal, and it was. I mean, they were saying that they were supposed to be giving the Justice Department updates and information and that across the board of what's going on, which they thought Hillary was going to be president, and a guy named Donald Trump kind of put a monkey wrench into that. But they were withholding information that they were required to send over to the Justice Department over there, and on and on and on. I mean, the blatant disregard for the law of the Federal Bureau of Investigation should be that. Now, if Congress, if Nadler and the crew over there, and Nancy Pelosi on that, were really concerned about the Constitution and the welfare of the United States, they should be stopping everything that's going on, starting doing some investigations on these guys and how this happened.
Well, this is all so completely political at this point that the Democrats are just scrambling to protect whoever their nominee is, and clearly they think it's going to be Joe Biden. And probably they're right about that. It doesn't look like anybody is overtaking him in the polls on any kind of national level. So they're struggling to protect him from having any questions asked about what went on in Ukraine with his son, who was pulling money out of the country, and with himself being in the Obama administration and overseeing Ukraine policy at the same time. They don't want any questions about that. So as soon as someone asks, they immediately jump down your throat and say, this is a discredited conspiracy theory. Well, wait a minute. Who discredited it, and where is it a theory? These are facts, that the vice president was in charge of Ukraine policy, and his son was on the payroll of a corrupt Ukrainian company, which was under investigation. And what in the world is discredited about that? Those are just facts. And it looks plainly like influence peddling and maybe something worse.
Yeah.
And we have every reason to investigate it. So why is the press running interference for Joe Biden? It's not their job. I don't understand this.
Oh, I understand it completely. They want him in there. They were, It's like Hunter Biden. I mean, the whole deal with that, collecting millions of dollars. The kid who's got, well, not a kid anymore, but I mean, the kid who's found with the crack pipe in his rental car and drug problems and all this stuff. If there was anybody that would probably be accepting bribes, would you say somebody who's had a big history of drug use on top of that, whose dad was the vice president and is getting all these favorable deals from the Ukraine and all this money from coming in? No, that doesn't seem to be bothering the whole crew up there on the side of the Capitol Hill that's going after Donald Trump. Exactly. This is a political. We are using law enforcement and the law to go after people politically that we don't like. I mean, we should not, in the United States, if this is going to be the case, we should not be criticizing any third world country, any tin horn dictator, or anybody else, because we're doing exactly the same thing.
No, you are exactly right. You're exactly right. Well, this is very concerning. But where do you think it's going? I kind of think it just backfires on the Democrats come next November.
Oh, I think I said it before. I said they keep pushing. I said the best thing that Trump could do is say, go ahead and impeach me, because in the beginning I said this whole thing is going to backfire on them, and it already has. The latest polls right now, the majority of the people right now are against impeachment. It's 51-45 when it was 45-45 the week before. So it's already switching. Now you can see the majority of Americans, by the latest poll, are saying no impeachment. And this is, again, you're seeing Democrats now that are in swing districts in the Congress are starting to back off, saying we might not be voting for this impeachment when it comes off, because they know their butt's going to be on the line if this thing goes through. No, they are almost not only, I think, are they making it almost a cinch lock that Donald Trump will be elected 2020. They're stacking the odds back in the favor that the Republicans are going to take over the House in 2020.
I hope so. I hope these pictures of Nancy Pelosi and Gerald Nadler and Adam Schiff and Maxine Waters standing at the podium talking about how Donald Trump is bad for America. I hope that those pictures bring down the Democratic majority in the House, because those people are not what you would call what would the word be? They're not the Mount Rushmore of the Democratic Party, historically speaking. They're not the greatest representatives of the tradition of the Democratic Party. And it's very distressing. It's very distressing to see the lies and the manipulations standing there accusing a president who's done an excellent job for the country and continues to do an excellent job for the country, as evidenced by these amazing jobs reports, the phenomenal stock market, the low interest rates. Everything is really okay economically in the country. And it's not so long ago that wasn't the case. Things are much better. And I think everybody remembers when it wasn't, and they will go to the polls and they'll say, I don't want this to go back to that. And they will vote for Trump. No matter what they tell the pollsters, I think a lot of people will vote for Trump.
I mean, I hope they weren't. I hope they were just caught on the blind side. The nutcases like Nadler and who's the Shifty Shift that's out here that have been really the ones, the driving force behind this. I really hope it's a case that they just didn't see this coming, because I don't really want to believe that they were that stupid to think that this was not going to backfire on them if they really, because I'm going to say, I mean, you can't say 100% sure, but with all the intelligence and all the ability a sitting congressman has to get information, they could. I don't see the reason especially Nadler and Schiff, head of the committees, which have even more latitude to get this stuff. I cannot believe they weren't aware of this stuff was going to come out in the IG report.
It's really distressing, though, that they are continuing to just leak and lie and distort, and the New York Times and the Washington Post just seem to eat it up, and they're fine with it. There's no scrutiny of the false statements. It's distressing, and I really feel that the country is going to take it out on journalism, and they're going to take it out on Democrats, and it's going to backfire on everyone who has not been fair in their reporting of this. But you know what? You might be right that the Democrats can see the damage, because today they as they were announcing impeachment, they were also announcing that they have scheduled some progress on the U.S.-Canada-Mexico trade agreement,
Yes.
and that's going to come to a vote. And they were very careful to make sure that was in the same sentence practically with impeachment, so it wouldn't look like they were just impeaching the president and not doing anything. That tells me that they see the trouble in the polling.
Exactly, and we covered that yesterday when owner of Toyota San Bernardino, Cliff Cummings, was on with us, who is our major sponsor here. And we talked about this exact same thing. And again, love or hate Nancy Pelosi, and believe me, there's a lot to hate, especially on my side of the deal, or not to dislike, if you want to use a kinder word of that. But she is a very savvy politician. And she's been trying to play both ends of the stick on that, because she probably knows this is political dynamite, but she's got this little crew over here that just will not let go of it. And that's what we talked about. It was very telling yesterday. I mean, within an hour of her standing up with Nadler and Schiff, talking about the Constitution or elections, an hour later saying, yeah, we have an agreement with Trump, Canada, and Mexico to redo the onerous NAFTA free trade agreement, which was lopsidedly in favor of Mexico and Canada, and we didn't even get any part of the short end of the stick on that deal.
Right.
And it was Trump and Trump renegotiated. He campaigned on it. He was right. He said, this is a stupid deal. We need to get out of it and get something that works for all of us. And Pelosi's up there saying that. And you're going to impeach a president who is righting the wrongs of Democrats, Republicans across the board, because this started with the Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama cabal that I call the monolithic presidency, where you say, and I'll debate this with, I'll debate 330 million people to one, and I will prove to you 98.7% of everything that started with Poppy Bush to went to Obama, the policies were 98.7% straight, the same.
I agree with you.
You take foreign policy in that, and he's correct. This to me is what's got the establishment in in a tithers, and it dovetails into what you're talking about on the media, and I'm talking the establishment, politicians, media, industrial military complex that's been controlling this stuff a lot of the time. This is what they are scared to death of Donald Trump about, because he's busting these paradigms right and left, pulling us out of Afghanistan, where none other than the Washington Post, just, if I don't know if you've seen it, released it Monday, of the $1 trillion we spent in there. And you have 3-star generals saying exactly the same thing as the IG's report. They were lying to you. There was no military reason we should have been in there. We should have never went in there in the first place. We spent all this money doing that, and the main thing we were protecting over there was the drug trade and the poppy fields, and we'll get into that later. But it's all, when you boil this all down and you look about it, it's, follow the money, because that's what 98.7% of this is about. And the one thing Donald Trump doesn't need is any more money, and that has them nervous. That's
the odd thing about these arguments they keep making, that he's doing this for personal benefit.
Yeah,
it's so ludicrous. If he was trying to, he could buy television commercials from now until November 2020 without the help of Ukraine.
Yes.
He can insult Joe Biden just fine
without
the help of Ukraine. And there's no reason that he needed any of this. It's so preposterous.
It is, yeah. What are you going? What does Donald Trump? What would Donald Trump want that he couldn't have? I mean, there's probably one or two things on the whole freaking planet Earth that isn't that. But I mean, the guy's got the ability to do whatever he wants. I mean, he could walk in there today and say, I resign from the presidency, tired of this crap, and go live his life merrily on, of the whole thing. Yeah, that's the one beauty behind Donald Trump, and I said that when he got elected, is this guy. What are you going to offer if you wanted to bribe? If Putin wanted to bribe or control or do something, what is Putin going to offer Donald Trump that he doesn't already have?
Nothing. There's nothing Donald Trump needs. And as you said, that makes him dangerous, because nobody has any way to pressure him. They don't have anything on him. They don't, he's lived a tabloid reported life for decades. There's nothing. There's nothing we don't know about him. And it's just silly that the Democrats think, oh, well, this is the worst president. This is the most scandalous president. This is the best economy any of us ever have seen. And really, it's been a long time coming, and he's done an amazing job. And this is what they're so upset about, because they've been saying it can't be done. And you all have to adjust to, this is the new normal, 1% growth and no new jobs and robots replacing all of us and no manufacturing, and that's the new normal. And he comes in and he proves in 2 years none of that nonsense is valid, and he improves everything.
Yeah.
And guess what? They've got nothing on which to run a campaign. They've got nothing.
And it is, and I mentioned a little bit at the top of the show, but I don't know how deep you, or if you want to get into it, but I mean, you kind of suffered a little bit from running in campaigns and stuff. Got a little bit of the wrath of the government coming after you. Could you just give a little, to give the audience a little, like the big picture of what you've been going through? Because I see some of the same parallels between the situation we have going now up in the District of Criminals and what you're personally facing right now.
Well, I had a peculiar experience. I jumped into an assembly race for a special election. I had run for Congress with no chance to win, but just to make the argument that what they were doing in 2012 with the stimulus and the debt was so wrong, and I wanted to write articles and make speeches and try to bring another viewpoint into the debate. So I got involved in politics then. And then 1 year later, actually, there was a special election for the assembly, and people in the community came to me and said, we think you did well and we think you should run for this. So I did. I'd never run in a state race before. My whole experience in it was this one federal race. And I didn't know that the campaign finance reporting for the state of California was so completely different and wildly complicated. And it became even more complicated because I was forced to have two committees because of a scheduling issue. When you have two committees, you have to do double reporting. Everything is doubled. It was very complicated. I did the best I could. I called with questions. I talked to the Secretary of State's office. I talked to the FPPC, the Fair Political Practices Commission. I talked to the county. I did everything I could to try and get everything filed correctly, even checked with them after the election was over and said, is everything in place? Is anything missing? Is anything incorrect? I want to correct it. I was in touch with them the whole time. Some of the stuff was late because I never got the schedule for some of it. Even though I was asking for help, they never sent me the schedule, and I never found it on my own. So a few of the reports were late, and they charged $10 a day in late fees. So I paid the late fees, and some of it was so ridiculous that they waived some of it for good cause because of the complexity of two committees. Okay, fade out, fade in. January of 2016, just before the filing period opens for the 2016 election, just before, this was January, the filing period opened in February, I get a letter from the Fair Political Practices Commission. This is 2016 for an election that was in 2013. We are charging you with violating the Political Reform Act. Send us $6,000 and sign this confession, essentially, this stipulated agreement that says you agree that you're guilty and you agree that you violated the law, and send us $6,000 or we will come after you for worse. This is what it says. And it's on the legal paper, the numbered lines paper that tells you that it's the state of California and they're coming after you to put you like in jail. And it was a civil thing, not right. Criminal, but still very alarming. So I call them up and I say, what is this? And they say, well, this is our negotiation with you. What? So this is what they do. They charge you for every piece of paper that's incorrect, and they say it's $5,000 per error, $5,000 maximum penalty, and if you don't agree to this, we will come after you for all of it. And that's what they did, because I thought that was outrageous. And I explained that I had done all this. I had emails back and forth with them explaining all this. So to make a long story short, I wouldn't cave in and sign it. They got angrier and angrier. They ended up fining me $11,500, even though they admitted that I had substantially complied with the law, made a good faith effort, and had no intention to conceal or deceive. And I had filed all these other things at the same time, but these particular ones, which were duplicates, were not filed on time. And for the ones that were not filed on time, $11,500. This is so outrageous that it has attracted the attention of lawyers across the country. And now I am in the process of working with a team of attorneys, evaluating whether we can go forward in either state or maybe federal court is what we would like to do to challenge this, because it's clearly, if not politically targeted, it has the effect of being politically targeted because they only do this to people who are outsider candidates. They don't do this to people who are endorsed by the governor. And you can see that in the case of Assemblyman Todd Gloria from San Diego, who illegally moved $300,000 from one committee to another because he wanted to run for mayor and he didn't want to lose the ability to use this money from his previous campaign. So he transferred it into a phony reelection campaign. And then he was using it to support his campaign for mayor, which is completely illegal, but he was doing it sort of within the lines of barely thing. But there was one particular piece of paper that he didn't file because it had to say under penalty of perjury that he was running for reelection for the assembly, which he wasn't doing, and he wouldn't sign it. So that's what they fined him for. They said for failing to file that one piece of paper, a fine of $200. Now I ask you, he's endorsed by the former governor, Jerry Brown, the current governor, Gavin Newsom, every labor union in the area, Dianne Feinstein, Javier Becerra. He's endorsed by the whole Democratic machine. And so the FPPC, for this transparently fraudulent money laundering that he did of $300,000, he's fined $200. And me, a Republican who almost won an assembly race, even though I was a tremendous long shot, I almost won. It was very close, within 320-some votes. They come after me with a sledgehammer, even though they admit that I substantially complied with the law. What do you make of that?
The reason why I wanted you to tell that story is the exact same reason, and every American should be supporting that. And even if you like I said, even if you hate Donald Trump, you think he's the worst president in the world, should not be there. You should be defending him in this, and you should be doing why I wanted you to tell your story. Because the next person they can be coming after is you, just like they're coming after you. Regular citizen wants to run, almost wins, looks like they're a threat. Oh, we got to stomp this out before this fire grows any good. They're coming after you. They're just like they came after Trump. And it's like the old saying, yeah, well, I didn't care if they got Fred, Joe, or Juanita, but when they're coming after me, there was nobody left. So if you go ahead.
It's a problem for everybody, even if you're not in politics, especially if you're not in politics, because you get your ballot and there's nobody running against the machine politician. They're running unopposed, or they're running opposed by someone who hasn't been able to raise any money. Well, why can't they raise any money? Lots of times in my area, these people run unopposed, or the people who run can't raise any funds. And the reason is because if somebody donates to a challenger, this campaign finance reporting goes right to the people who are in government, and they see who's supporting challengers. And then there's retaliation. Then there's consequences. So if you have a business and you ever need anything from the government, which you need all the time in California, guess what? You're the enemy. And you don't want to be the enemy when you have a business in California. It's tough enough, and you're always going to need an approval. You're going to need a permit. You're going to need something. You're going to need a phone call returned at some point. And if you support a challenger, they're going to know, and they're going to penalize you. And that is why California is in the state that it's in. Between discouraging people from running and reporting all of the money that's given to challengers in this repetitive and extremely instantaneous way, every donation over $1,000 has to be reported within 24 hours. And in the period before the elections, where the federal government only requires one pre-election report, California wants two pre-election reports because they want to see right up to the wire who's supporting the challengers. And they call that making it a level playing field. Well, guess what? It's not a level playing field when machine politicians control every part of the state government and most of the city councils and most of the county boards of supervisors, and anybody who challenges machine politicians is obliterated one way or another. How does that work out for the people of California?
Or the whole United States. Look at, I mean, and this has far-reaching effects other than politics, because like you said, what if you're in a business and what if you're competing against the brother-in-law of the state senator or federal senator or something, and they just decide to use the power of the government to twist you right out of business?
Which they absolutely can do, and what are you supposed to do about it?
Yes. Illegally doing it on top of that, like they're doing to Trump and possibly what they're doing to you. So, that's what I'm saying. If like with it, especially, and I mean, I like to hear the defense from somebody, especially in the Trump deal with this IG report that says that the FBI was currently disregarding any sort of law discussion, Constitution. Pelosi, you're talking about the Constitution. What about all the violations that they did against the Trump campaign, Carter Page, and everybody else they went after on this whole deal? You're not concerned about that? Where's the press conference on this?
They should be very concerned. The reason we have a FISA court at all is because there were hearings, I believe in the 1970s, about abuses by the CIA and federal law enforcement against Americans. And that's why we have this special court that does secret warrant approvals. And they have all these special requirements for what the application has to say. The standards are very high. The safeguards are supposedly in place. And so when you look at what happened here, where the FBI made 17, quote, significant errors, according to the Inspector General, there should not be any errors, significant or otherwise, because these things are supposed to be checked and double-checked and verified, and these are well-established procedures for decades. and they just ran right over it and ignored it. Is it unintentional? I don't think so. And I think the Inspector General was way, way biased in deciding that he was not going to say there was bias because it's not plausible that these people at this high level in this high-profile investigation, that no one was looking at this and saying you can't do that. Something is just really wrong here.
Yeah,
and as you said, it can happen to them, it can happen to us, it can happen to anybody. And it's an extreme abuse of government power, what the FBI did. Very troubling.
Yes, I mean, there should be indictments coming out against Comey, Strzok, and Page, and everybody else was involved in this whole fiasco on that. There cannot be any question at this point of what came out today. Just if you stop today, and I'm sure there's going to be, there's 500 or some odd pages in the IG report on this stuff. I imagine when you get really into the details and how much of a deep state the tentacles of this stuff, and that's why I wanted to show that. That's why I wanted you to tell your story, because this story probably happens 100,000 times a day across America, where our government is turning against the people on that for not to keep a regulated society for the gain or something of somebody else's purpose, and that has to stop.
It has to stop, and it's very difficult to fight, because when you're dealing with corrupt government, which is what this is, when you're dealing with corrupt government, and they're the government, where do you go? Where do you go? So that's why I think my case will have to be resolved in the federal courts. I'm not sure we would get any kind of a fair hearing in the state courts. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm overly pessimistic, but I know who appointed those judges, and I'm pretty concerned.
Yes, rightfully so.
Yeah. So where do you go for justice when the government itself is corrupt? This is a big problem. In East Berlin, they pushed down the Berlin Wall. And that's what it took there. What do we do in California? I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, it's absolutely crazy of what's going on this whole deal. I mean, from what was going on in this, I mean, I've been waiting for this type of thing to come out on the deal, because I mean, I think that the IG's report is a total game changer on this deal, and like. Just before the report is released, the majority of Americans, 51%, are saying no impeachment. I bet you that number is going to skyrocket on the next polling coming out after this IG report.
Yeah, well, the IG report has a tremendous amount of factual material in it from which people can draw their own conclusions. And then there is this second report coming out from the special prosecutor, John Durham, and he's already told us that he doesn't agree with the benign findings, benign conclusions. So we will see what happens. This is not over, but it certainly is a shame that so much of the Trump administration has been expended on nonsense when they could have been doing they could have been doing prescription drug reform, and they could have been doing more trade deal work, and they could have been doing infrastructure, and they could have been doing who knows what if they were working like normal people, instead of just campaigning for 2020 for the entire 4 years of the term. And it's what might have been.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, well, maybe it's for the best, though, because they probably just would have come up with sort of a higher tax.
Yes, at the current, with Pelosi and the crew running the deal, yeah, we're better treading water on that. And like I say, I hope they're I hope, and I think I'm right. I think even more. I'm even more confident in it. They're just giving their own. They're giving us the ammunition to fire back at them. And I just hope that this year in 2020 we take advantage of it. But I want to shift gears because I do want to cover your latest column in Southern California News Group about the homeless, because that's another very important issue we need to address, and we keep that right on the front burner. So go ahead and explain your latest editorial.
Well, there's a little bit of good news on this front. There are three developments that indicate that we may be turning the corner, that it may have gotten so bad that we've hit bottom on this issue. One is that Darrell Steinberg, who used to be the Senate Majority Leader, leader of the Democratic Party in the Senate, and was the author of Proposition 63 in 2004, which was a 1% increase in income tax an extra 1% in income tax on wealthy Californians to fund mental health services. He wrote that. He was testifying at an Assembly Budget Subcommittee that he thinks the money should be spent on homelessness. And what's interesting about that is that most of the time, people in power want to disconnect the discussion of homelessness from the discussion of any kind of mental health. But here he was putting it together again. And normally you'll hear them say, oh, no, it's all based on income inequality and housing prices. There's not enough housing. And then they use those viewpoints to justify higher taxes and more density being forced on communities, when really we all know there's a component of it that's mental health and substance abuse. And you can estimate it anywhere you want. I've heard it estimated at 100% by Reverend Andy Bales of the Union Rescue Mission in downtown Los Angeles. He says it's 100% the people living on the streets, mental illness and substance abuse. So by saying that, what he's asking the legislature to do is to take the $2 billion that's raised annually by this tax, which is supposed to be for mental health services, and put the money to work on the problem of homelessness, which is a very big breakthrough, I think. And the other two things that are significant is that Donald Trump is threatening to take action, and no one's sure exactly what he'll do, but he can do a lot if he chooses to. So that's something. And the third thing is the U.S. Supreme Court is considering whether to hear an appeal in the case of Martin versus Boise, which was the Ninth Circuit's ruling that cities are not allowed to enforce a ban on camping on the sidewalks unless they have shelter beds for everyone. And this has proved to be completely unworkable because there aren't going to be shelter beds for everyone, and the cities don't want to build shelters. They want to build housing at $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 per unit for the homeless, which is completely unaffordable and unworkable. And it's going to be a failed policy if it isn't already. So the fact that the Supreme Court might reverse that decision, that would allow cities to have the authority to ban tent encampments, and that would allow them to compel people to go to shelters, which currently they can't do. And that's, so those three things, talking about mental health and money that we're already paying in taxes, that's a good thing. The possible reversal of the Martin versus Boise case in the Supreme Court, that's a good thing. And Donald Trump getting involved and scaring Gavin Newsom and the rest of the officials in government in California because they can't control what he's going to do, and they're pretty alarmed about it.
Yes.
It could be very significant, and it could be quite politically impactful because if he can get the tent encampments off the sidewalks, I personally know a lot of Democrats who will vote for him.
Yeah, and I think that's what one thing that was running through my mind was when Trump said, "Oh, okay, California, you're not going to do anything about the homeless crisis. We may be coming in to give you a little assistance on that."
Exactly.
So maybe that was a little bit of push on that. And yes, this is going to be a test, and I hope Roberts doesn't waffle on the deal. I hope the Supreme Court, which usually if they pick the case up, they're going to reverse it. I hope they reverse that Boise deal because that's what they've been using that lower court ruling to keep this whole homeless deal going or proliferating as it has been, I should say, on that. Because again, it's all about the money. Look at the billions of dollars now that are being spent, or a few people are collecting, building down in L.A., building a little 300 square foot mini apartments for like $600,000 a piece. It's absolutely ridiculous.
It's completely unaffordable. Even if it was a successful policy for the individuals who were put in those apartments, I'm not sure that it is, but even if it was, we can't afford that. If you do the math on that, and you say, okay, you've got 90,000 unsheltered people in the state of California, and we're going to build a $600,000 apartment for each of them, we can't do it. And there's moral hazard in that because here in Los Angeles, they're saying, well, we have to have these in every council district. There are 15 council districts, so we want them in Malibu, and we want them in Pasadena, and we want them in Chatsworth in the San Fernando Valley. We want to have homeless housing spread out equally around the the whole city area. Well, you know what? There's a lot of places in Los Angeles that people would like to live, but they can't afford it. So are you going to say that someone pitches a tent in Brentwood and you have to build them a homeless shelter in Brentwood so they can live in Brentwood? Do you know how many people work 2 jobs and can't afford a Brentwood? It's not right. It's not. There's moral hazard in this, in saying that if you're a vagrant drug addict and you refuse to do anything to help yourself, the taxpayers will provide you with a better place to live than they can afford themselves. There's something wrong with that.
Exactly, on that whole deal. And man, it's a lot of stuff is popping, and I think 2020 is going to be 2020 we're back in silly season election year, and a lot of important, like I say, from the federal level down to our city councils is going to be, as they all are, but I think this is going to be another significant, hopefully turning point on that, and we'll be covering it all, and hopefully having you on more in the future in 2020. Thanks for being on, Susan Shelley. Tell them how they can join Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association.
Oh, you must join the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, because we are fighting to protect Proposition 13 so people are not taxed out of their homes and businesses. And what you can do, you may see tables out there that say Protect Prop 13, sign here. It doesn't protect Prop 13. It's not from Howard Jarvis. Go to our website at hjta.org and see if you signed the wrong thing, and you can take your signature off of it with a document you can get on our website. And please join and help us strengthen the voice of taxpayers in California.
You got it. Thanks for being on. We'll have you on in the future, Susan.
Thank you. Take care.
You got it. That was a good rendition of that. We hadn't had her on for a while, so we get a lot of news was popping today on some very important subjects on that. And yeah, and the reason even more important about the impeachment and all that, and Trump and da-da-da-da. This whole deal is coming on. The broader scope of this is, they may be coming after you next. Do you want the full power of the federal government coming after you if they don't like what you're doing? And that's essentially what they were doing to Donald Trump. Maybe what they were doing to Susan Shelley, we'll find out. But they do it hundreds and thousands of times every year, and it's growing. And if we are to enjoy any sort of freedom, high quality of life, or not be enslaved to the slave master, this stuff has got to stop. As in yesterday. It's absolutely ridiculous. We cannot let it stand, because not only our future, but future generations, we don't want them looking back and saying, why the hell did you let this happen? And, I certainly don't want to be the one that has to face that music or go down in the annals of history as the ones who turned the greatest nation in the history of recorded earth, into a tin horn dictatorship and watched it fall into a pile of rubble. And that's, if for no other reason than that, that's why we talk about this stuff a lot on here, because it is very important. But go ahead and scroll up on the old IE and Newswire, and we'll kind of dust through some of the stuff that was going on locally on the deal, going across to the deal, coming on as I'm waiting for the screen to pop up on the computer. Is that one of the things? I know I can do this off the top of my head. We talked about it yesterday. There was a closed session that was called on the 24-hour basis. About city manager Tom DeSantis' retirement, dismissal, interim city manager. They did put out a press release after that, essentially saying Tom DeSantis has retired, and that Mike Lee was the interim. But and the only place where you can get the real news, or the behind the scenes, or the news that others will not print. Scroll up to the next one, to the Tom DeSantis story, since I'm talking about that. As the what's wrong with the. We're gonna have to get a handle on this computer stuff that keeps going up on the keeps slowing down. I hate it when that little wheel comes around on the keep going up, keep going up, keep going. That's it. That's the one I want. So blow the picture up. So it says on the deal. There's the picture on there, and it says now. On Moreno Valley's Politics Matters, that's a page we run out. Me and Deborah Craig are admins. Maddie Lopez and Diane are on. Yeah, we kind of cover the local stuff. So, it kind of gets a lot of the inside politics people that go on that across Moreno Valley. So we're kind of up on that. But, and one of the members of that is our former councilman and longtime and first Parks and Recreation Director Georgie Price. And he wrote on the on Moreno Valley Politics Matter, which we covered, and you're seeing the picture of it in IEN with the picture of Tom DeSantis about this. He said, the odds are better that Epstein died of natural causes than DeSantis retired voluntarily. Okay, so that's a former high-ranking city employee, executive management team sat in the well for like 15, from 1990 to 2005 or 6? 16 years, I believe, plus 2.5 years as a Moreno Valley City Councilman, I think from 2014 to 2016. That's just not somebody that's somebody who was in the inside. That is somebody who has actually sat in closed sessions as a council member and seen how the sausage was made. That's not Crazy Roy just spouting off or somebody this or da-da-da-da. That's somebody that actually has been on the inside of that and knows the players. I don't recall. I think Tom DeSantis became city manager after George Price left office, but I know he was assistant city manager during that time. So George is real familiar, as only a few people are, of the way and how and things work in Moreno Valley. So for him to write a comment like that, may carry a little bit more weight than some of the others. So we'll see what happens. Why? It just all of a sudden came out of the blue. All of a sudden, the city manager's retiring. Boom, he says it's been in the works for a while. He's talked to the mayor about it. No rumblings about it, no nothing. Just boom, out, not, or, I'm gonna be gone by December 24th, da-da-da-da. Natural retirement, usually, there's just typical, I'm not saying it couldn't be, but usually, in a retirement, you're planning 3, 4, 6 months, a year in advance. You've got everything mapped out. You're coming up. You usually make these announcements. Yeah, okay, I'm going to be retiring in 3 to 6 months. Gives you plenty of time to find a new city manager, yada, yada, yada. Typically, and most professionally, if that was in my view and my experience of it, if this had been in the works for a long time, then the process would have been played out for where the city could have done an executive search, look for a city manager, come back and said, okay, we're doing that. Give some time to interview candidates, do that. You wouldn't need to appoint a interim city manager or go through that transition, the double transition of that and everything else. The way everything would work smoothly and stably. So I will tell you this, and I get a lot of comments, talk to a lot of people involved in a lot of things. And one thing business likes is predictability, stability. If they're investing capital in a city or a county or a state or a country or whatever, they want to make sure that there is a very reasonable expectation that they are going to succeed. They are going to make money at this deal because that's how business survives. Let's cut through the chase of all this. This is not this is not the Wizard of Oz or Fantasyland or anything else. That's it. Hi, Lori. Glad to have you on. To all you folks at Him at iNews, Lisa, and all the ones that checked in. Hannah, I know, have checked in on that. Saw that. We go all across the board. But yeah, business likes stability. They like predictability. They want to know if, we're investing $10,000, $100,000, millions of dollars in a project in a certain area. That, we're relatively confident of that. One thing that will make business back up quicker than anything is unstable. You don't know what's going on. People moving in and out all the time of various jobs in the government positions. Well, you start a project and you go through it and you're changing people all the time, 3 or 4. Executive management team is changing. City managers are changing all the time. That's just because then, that adds more expense, time, because then the new person has to come in and you have to get them up to speed or and things go like that. It's just not a environment conductive of being business friendly, success of that. So again, not saying that anything nefarious is going on or anything was that, but it's just sometimes the way things go just make you go, It's just like they appropriated $2 million for the general plan, and they sat on it for 2 years and didn't do anything, and now they're finally doing it, taking from the time they started in 2016 to the time they appropriate, took them 2 years to appropriate the money or get a engineering firm out there to start the process of the environmental impact reports and all the stuff and reports and studies and this and that going on. Heck, it's probably going to take them 4 to 5 years to do that. I stepped up to the council. They appropriated almost $2 million, and when they did that, I said, you can do this on the model that Mill Creek, California does. You could have this done for $1 million or less, and you can have it done, I think, at 18 months max. But I said, if you really put your nose to the grindstone, you can have a general plan amendment done in a year. And that's what businesses would like to see. Okay, we could have fixed a lot of these problems, like I call Moreno Valley the patchwork quilt city of planning, because it makes no sense in how the city is laid out. We just proved this, stuck this over there, and when you put it all together, it's like a quilt. It has a neon orange this and bright pink over here and pink polka dots, purple polka dots over here, and you look at it and you go, huh? How does this, this didn't look... And that's what the problem is with that. There's no stability of that. And that's probably why, especially in this cycle, cities like Moreno Valley have been lagging behind on the growth comparative to the other cities around. And that's unfortunate because in all this stuff, we all could use that, and I've said it many times. The natural terrain in Moreno Valley, being up in the valley, being up above the smog line or the inversion layer, 1,500 feet. Then the mountains around it, the views around here. And there's still an opportunity to do it, but I see it slipping, and it's getting ever narrower. You could make this, if not one of the premier centers that people want to come to, businesses, make this a center of commerce and living that would be unprecedented in the Inland Empire. We talked a little bit about it with Cliff yesterday about that. What would it be like if Riverside and San Bernardino counties went into Nevada, and I got to thinking of that. That would be absolutely brilliant, because you know what I was thinking, hypothetically, if that ever happened, I'm going to be the first guy out there, right along the Riverside San Bernardino County borders. You have 12 million people. So what I would be doing, I would be buying up all the property that I could, that was commercial or that you could put a gas station in. I would have 10,000 stalls of gas stations, because you know what? You walk 2 feet across this line and your gas is going from $3.75 a gallon to $2.25. And you've got 12 million people sitting right across the street. Where are they going to go? You would have to have a pipeline coming from the refineries down in Torrance to that. You couldn't truck the gas in fast enough. People would be buying it. That's the difference between overregulation and stability in this stuff and being a success. And not only not just to pick up Moreno Valley, but the whole state of California, like it has ran businesses and out of this place with incessant, stupid rules and regulations, caused housing crises and homelessness and traffic backups and everything else that were not necessary, only for all the reasons. But it's just like that type of thinking and stuff that that really needs to come about on some of this stuff. So I hope that kind of stimulates some of the conversation, and maybe it will stimulate some of the stuff of people actually going down and paying attention to what's going on in your local areas. Cruise down to that local city council meeting, county board of supervisors, school board meeting, and just ask, hey, why is all this stuff going on? Why can't why we have $2.50 a gallon? Because it's all interrelated. They'll try and pass the buck on that, but don't let them do it. Hold your representatives accountable, because bottom line, they work for you. That's it for today on Wicked Wednesday. We had fun on that, doing all the stuff. Thanks to Susan Shelley for being on. We'll be back on Thursday tomorrow. Maybe Stephanie will cruise by since she played hooky today and she had a legitimate reason. She had an engagement she had to go to. But hopefully she'll be in Thursday. We'll have a lot of fun, cover the news and events and everything that's going on. So back in 23 hours, mandatory that you be here. See ya.